recording. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Hey, thanks. And again, thank you everyone for letting me hang out with you guys tonight. I know that Monday night, 6 to 8 p.m. class, Decal in and of itself is, I'm sure you were just looking forward to this session and looking forward to this time. But there's always stuff going on. So I appreciate you guys letting me hang out with you. Overall, there are just, don't have too much in terms of slides and all that stuff. I did put together a few things just to kind of anchor the conversation, particularly just around some of the topics I want to cover. I do have some things I want to share, just my thoughts and some experiences, and then but then definitely, I think are we scheduled to go to 7:30, 8?
8 o'clock is when the class officially ends. But you can totally finish at 7:30 and leave it open for Q&A. A lot of the students actually usually have a lot of great questions.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, no, it sounds perfect. We can lean in and move it that direction. So overall, let me just see if I can share my my screen here. And okay, I think it's showing up. And I got a couple of thumbs ups. There we go. Works. All right. So one of the things on my end here, and I also don't really like showing my face too much. So let me try to move forward in that. All right, great. So, obviously you guys are very well aware of everything that is going on within the world. It is certainly a very challenging world. It's at times it's a very ugly world. And so 2020, really the main driver has been COVID, right? COVID-19 response, recovery. But the pandemic has also really accelerated many of the trends and issues that we were already facing, right? These aren't things that are new. These aren't things that came out of nowhere and like, oh my God, 2020 is horrible. Where are these things coming from? COVID's amplified stuff. It showed that there are a lot of cracks and fissures and just breaks in society and what we're doing as industrialized, one of the most industrialized nations in the country. And so, folks are trying to figure out vaccines. Folks are trying to figure out what do we do related to, innovations and technology related to addressing this. There's some disruption of care models and new market entrants, financial challenges, right? Like I work in, and I'll tell you more about my current job here later in a couple slides, but, I work in healthcare, I work in a system here, the Safety Net Health System for Alameda County, in which, Berkeley is situated. And, we were canceling elective surgeries and others. And so a lot of the revenue money-making aspects and facets of the entities are drying up, right? So we have those financial challenges. We have a shifting workforce. People are getting laid off. Some people are coming in from other industries looking for jobs. I think earlier, was it Tara said she was working at a COVID testing site. And so, like, yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's what it was. So, fighting the good fight and making it happen there, and it's challenging. And so we have that, and folks trying to work hard in those front lines. Then we have these huge disparities, right, in care, addressing social determinants of health, and I'll definitely look to later on for our public health folks here in the room to really love to hear your thoughts about that, kind of what you're seeing, what do you feel, what perspective you have around the social determinants of health that are really affecting this. And so one of the things as a health administrator and here in my role, like, we want to make a difference in the lives of those we serve. And it's our job to be truly prepared with all this stuff, but it's really just hard. And so that's just COVID, right? Then we talk about these incredible jarring issues, right? The fact of the matter, the murder of George Floyd, killed in cold blood. And it's the unfortunate part is that certainly is not the first time that's ever happened, and unfortunately, it's not the last time it's going to happen. And with the advent and the age of social media and telephones, we're just seeing it now, right? It's not all of a sudden that, hey, racism and is all happening. All of a sudden, 2020 is the year of racism. This has been happening in the 1900s, the 1800s, the 1600s, 1500s. I mean, dating back to slavery. This has just been horrendous, and yet it's here playing out in full ugly display in our country. And as as students and young adults and folks going through some of this work, we're seeing that this is not what we want, not the society we want for ourselves. And so again, it's almost the pressures of being at Berkeley, right? So, you know, the activism that's come out has been really strong, and some folks have been thrust into it, maybe not necessarily, you know, what they had chosen for themselves in their 3 to 4 years or 5 years at the school, but certainly something that a lot of students and a lot of folks and adults have stepped into and lead into, right? Seldom do we get to choose, you know, which challenges we want to undertake, but instead they're thrust upon us, and then whatever doesn't break us makes us stronger. And you guys are all in many ways like diamonds, right? The saying is, diamonds are forged under pressure, right? So really a lot of that stuff here, what you guys are seeing is coming full circle. This also, you know, racial unrest and the civil unrest that's been coming up in the healthcare system, and we're seeing it. You know, for example, I work at Alameda Health System, and I'll talk about my job in a few slides, but that role is a responsibility. We have 5 hospitals across Alameda County responsible for providing the safety net health services for the county, right? So we're not actually a county entity, but we are a public health authority that provides those services for Alameda County. So we operate Highland Hospital, which is a trauma center here, pretty close to Berkeley. There's Psychiatric Hospital, John George. There's Fairmont Hospital, which is the rehabilitation hospital. And then we have 2 community-based hospitals, which are San Leandro Hospital in the city of San Leandro and Alameda Hospital in the city of Alameda on the island. Now that's those 5 sites. There's a 6th site, Park Ridge, which is a skilled nursing facility. There's a 7th smaller site, also skilled nursing facility called South Shore. And then we have 4 clinics, one in Newark Wellness Center, one in Hayward Wellness Center at the Southland Mall, and one in Eastmont Township, which is a converted mall. It used to be a mall, and now it has a charter school, a lot of services in there. And then we have some other clinic in Alameda. So with that being our footprint, and with all that happened, and our population is a safety net population, right? People of color, people who are uninsured, underinsured, can't afford healthcare, and in many cases, the disenfranchised, folks that have been on the, you know, on the cusp of society of looking for care. And so these folks are the ones that are, you know, Black, Indigenous peoples of color, whatever, you know, a lot of folks are using different terms, but these are the folks that are hurting, right? And these are the folks that are coming in and wanting to know, can they still come to the hospital? Wanting to know, is it still safe? You know, we have law enforcement that is at our hospital, and folks are now worried to come to get care. And so these are all things that are affecting us. And, you know, even with some of the protests here in Oakland, that we had folks that were protesting peacefully, and then we had folks that came in and you know, really fomented really some negativity and looting and rioting. And then those same folks came and ran into the ED at the Highland Hospital, right? Coming into under the auspices of receiving care, right? So they cause some damage, run in, get checked in, some of them for smoke, some of them for just hiding out. And so, you know, really puts us in an awkward and a difficult position, because we obviously want to protect our patients, but we also, it's hard because, you know, I personally don't want to condone and support these kind of negative, you know, actors in the world and in our community. So that's happening. Then on top of that, then we have all the wildfires, right? All the stuff, like literally the West Coast is burning. And so what are we doing there? And so, for example, for COVID, we, you know, I can certainly talk more about some of the stuff that my departments had to do to get prepared. For civil unrest, my teams, I oversaw, we had to board up our clinic in Southland Mall in case of rioting. We had to create additional barricades outside the trauma center on the evening of some of these riots to ensure that it wasn't a large kind of a, you know, massive bum rush on the ED and causing folks to have issues. Here with the wildfires, the smoke, you guys will know it best, how difficult it was and how horrible the air quality was. And, you know, we had to shut down clinics. We had folks with respiratory issues. How do we help improve the air in a building? And ultimately, you know, I would get calls from folks saying, oh, you know, do something. The air quality is horrible. And it's challenging because it's like, well, I can't stop Mother Nature, guys. There's no filter design strong enough that is going to combat what we're seeing out there. And so part of it was how to compassionately address people's concerns, but also let them know that, you know, unfortunately, this is a bad situation, and we either have to close down clinics and other things. the only thing that tempers those challenges are the fact that, yeah, we have difficult air quality, but people have lost their lives and people have lost their homes. And so, yes, it's tough to have the air quality index as horrible as it was, and for people that have sensitivities, and we're also getting affected with the respiratory issues. But we also know that it was a lot. If it was bad here, it was a lot worse in other places. So we have that going on. And this shot right here is just I took a snapshot a couple weeks ago, just around the incredible amount of smoke blanketing the West Coast, right? And so it's just an incredible sight, but it's also incredibly sad to see kind of what's going on in that world. So with that being said, then it gets to kind of like, some of the stuff of my world. Like what do I do? What is support services? How did a public health person get into kind of these things? And so support services really is a code for operations, right? Ops, like getting down and dirty of how do you make sure the health system and health systems run fluidly and smoothly. So we obviously have folks that are providing care. We have doctors, we have nurses, we have, physical therapists, pharmacists, social workers, a lot of folks that are providing care in front end for the patients. Everything that I oversee, everything that I do, that's all the indirect care providers. So people that aren't actually providing you health care and health treatments, but are the ones that are really, if these guys don't show up to work, truly the experience of a patient and the family and the staff member comes to a screeching halt. So that includes environmental services, which, the folks that are cleaning and terminally cleaning the rooms, the ORs, the exam rooms, especially with COVID, as folks come in that are suspected persons under investigation, PUIs, or if they're eventually COVID positive, a huge deal. There's been a greater focus on the EVS component of healthcare systems and healthcare operations than has ever been, in the past, because they know how critical it is to fighting the virus and making sure things are clean. Facilities is really like, we call, it kind of encompasses groundskeeping and engineering and all that, but, it's really the physical plant, the building. How do you make sure you come in as a patient and it's not too cold and the AC is not too, not cranked too high, or it's not too hot, or how do we keep the airflow, and how do we make sure that the lights are on, making sure that you as a patient, when you're in this building, it actually looks like you want to be there, right? It's clean and it's functioning. Similar to your, if you take this context of what I'm walking through and apply it to your own apartment and to your home, right? There's so many things that you do to make it livable for you. You clean, you cook, you do laundry, you change the sheets. That's really, truly, if any of that stuff just stopped, that would create kind of such an incredibly negative experience for you. So that's, facilities. And engineering are the folks that the building engineers, the mechanical engineers that are coming in, changing out tiles, doing whatever you need to make sure that things are going well. The groundskeeping, for the grounds, and making sure that, we have gardens and other things that patients, when they arrive, doesn't look overrun. This is a facility that you want to be in. These are facilities you want to be in. Biomedical engineering, that's also the medical equipment. How do you make sure that if a medical equipment is touching you, things that we sometimes take for granted, that thermometer or the blood pressure cuff, how do you know that's accurate? How do we know that's been calibrated? How do we know that's actually going to give you what you need? And that goes up to like EKG machines and ventilators and pumps and, ultrasounds and CTs and MRIs. And so my teams are responsible for making sure that stuff is functioning on a day in, day out, and are getting their preventative maintenance. Security, I was just actually, we're in the midst of, hopefully you don't see my face again on the news the next couple of days, but we're in the midst of massive strike planning. So on Wednesday, we received notice, unfortunately, that 2 large unions in our health system are going to go on strike for 5 days. And so, the concern is, will there be picketers who are going to be really not their best selves? And how do we protect our staff coming and going and patients and how does that make sure that's effective? And, security is always an issue just around at a trauma center. We have folks that come in, sometimes they're victims of gang violence, and we have folks that come in and want to finish the job. So how do you make sure that folks are secluded and excluded from others? We have screening processes. Staff feel safe of who they're treating. Staff feel safe going to their cars at night, coming into work. For COVID, security was really big for us because we had to create single points of entry where we wanted all staff and all patients to come into to distinct locations, so they can be then when they're coming in to be screened, making sure they don't have a fever, making sure that they don't have any symptoms, making sure they're clear and they get a daily sticker that says they're cleared to be that day. Obviously, there's some challenges in folks that are asymptomatic, but again, early days of the pandemic, dating back to March, how do we get that going? How do we start? How do we get stanchions in place? Really very basic things, but very critical to ensure staff felt like the organization was protecting their safety. For engineering, for example, I don't know if many of you've heard on the news about negative pressure rooms, right? So negative pressure rooms are pretty much rooms where if you're in a room and it's negative pressure compared to the outside, right? So if you think of plus minus, negative, the negative sign in the room, positive sign outside the room. And what that means is negative is going low. So it sucks air from the outside, from the positive side, under the door, right? Under the door jamb and through frames into the room, and then it gets expelled out. So if you think of it this way, sometimes for those of you who have AC or other things, you might have the door slightly close to your, not being closed, but maybe if you turn on the AC, all of a sudden the door to your room closes, right? Because the air pressure that's now being pumped into the room creates a pressure that pushes the door closed. So that's actually positive pressure. It's pushing air from the room you're in out to another space. And so the negative pressure was a huge deal for us related to COVID treatments, because we wanted to make sure that anyone that was in the room that could possibly be a PUI or COVID positive, that the pressure that wasn't expelling droplets or wasn't expelling any air out into the corridor where other staff were. So we had to make sure everything was being sucked in and then being expelled through the ventilation system. So my job was to figure out, and this is, mind you, I'm a history major, guys, right? Don't forget, right? Yeah, I took the physics, I took 2 physics classes that were the requirements for pre-med, but I would by no means say that I'm a physics even conversationally clear with physics. But what we had to do is we had to do some calculations or mechanical engineers and say, okay, how do we then turn these rooms that are not designed to be negative pressure, how do we turn them into negative pressure? So that's like you telling me to come into your home and to make your bedroom negative pressure. And so what we had to do was we had to pretty much decrease the flow of air into the room, so it was pushing less air in, and increase the flow of air out, so it started pushing more air out, right? So it's kind of like throwing your car in park and then hitting the gas pedal, right? So we're stopping one place, but we're hitting it the other way. And so it created like this churn. And then we put in HEPA filters, which helped create an air exchange with what was going on in the room. And so that's how we converted rooms across our health system and increased the negative pressure capacity to be prepared for a surge to treat more patients, right? So it's very wild stuff. And, those folks are just like, oh, can you do that? And it's very hard because these buildings aren't designed that way. But how do we get it going? How do we measure it? And how do we consistently round on it to make sure that's going clear? So that's one thing. I also oversee real estate, so where all our sites are, transportation, shuttles, parking. Parking is always an issue in the Bay Area, particularly in Oakland. I oversee food and nutrition services, so that's the folks that, how do the meals get prepared, right? A lot of folks, a lot of cultures and communities really thrive and are built around food, right? And that's part of a healing element. How do we make sure the food doesn't suck? How do we make sure that we have the ability to do on demand? You can order like it's room service. Some hospitals, and in fact, many hospitals are moving towards and have moved towards a kind of room service model. You're already at kind of in your worst state. You're already feeling crappy. If you can get a meal that is hearty or gives you some semblance of choice in your life, the ability to make a choice when you don't have a choice to be in a hospital, really, how do we empower that? So I oversee, those services. That includes retail cafes, if you were to walk in and just want to get a meal as a visitor, and also then the dietary, and which is intertwined with FNS around making sure that you get what you want. So Francis could say, "Hey, I'm here for a certain thing, but I really want just like a bunch of puddings. Like that'll really make me feel better. It would be amazing. Let's do it." But hey, Francis, you're actually not allowed to have that much sugar, man. So sorry, right? How do we let him down easy? How do we make sure that we're protecting, the healthcare orders of the providers and the doctors, and also just making sure that things are going. Same thing then, if we go the other way around, then we're talking about supplies, right? We're in a hospital. How do we make sure that supplies get in? So this is what was a huge, what kept me up at night and still does, PPE. All in the news, right? That's also something that I oversee. How do I make sure my health system, Alameda Health System, has the PPE it needs to provide the service and the care it needs to the patients that are coming in and to our providers that are providing it, right? No tall order, but have an incredible team. And materials management really is composed of a few different things, right? It's a department that when the trucks back up in the morning and they bring supplies every morning to a hospital, they pull up to a dock, and then the materials management team unloads that truck, they receive it, and then they stock it in the supply rooms at the hospital, and in the main huge kind of area, and then from there they pull them out of those rooms onto the floors into the units where you would be seen, whether it's an outpatient visit or a room. It all only gets there for purchasing. It's another department, does its job. So I oversee purchasing and said, hey guys, like, how do we go after things? So I'm talking like, I don't think I slept for like 3 or 4 months, whereas like everyone and their mother was like, oh, I know someone who knows someone. And so it's like, okay, great. Let's chase down contacts in the middle of the night, just because we don't want to be the ones, we don't want to miss out. I never wanted to miss out on an opportunity in case that was the one that was going to get us more PPE that we needed. And PPE obviously is a jargony term. And so that includes gloves, includes masks, regular masks, the N95 masks, includes goggles, includes face shields, includes gowns for surgeries, and separate gowns that are called isolation gowns, and booties and head covers. So a lot of things go into kind of treating what we're trying to do here for our patients. So, the purchasing team, we have an amazing team at Alameda Health System, led by an amazing manager who just really works very hard to get that going. Then we also have environmental health and safety. So that's a little different. That's folks to make sure that's safe. So if you were, making sure that folks, if they file a complaint with Cal OSHA and others, that, we feel safe, that, this is the department that makes sure all the other things I talked about function well, right? It's too hot. We're working in a department that, in a room that is overheating or really cold, or, we can't breathe, and, complaints can get filed. And how do we make sure that we're making sure that it's safe for our staff and patients? Also, this group focuses on the environment of care, making sure things are meeting all regulations, making sure that, doors are fire rated, that things close on time, things work well. It's just a huge, huge undertaking. And then we have interpreter services, which, as you all know, is a huge, huge component, especially with the safety net population. We cannot communicate with folks, we cannot treat them. And, it's you can't, saying something louder in English or yelling at someone slower in English doesn't make them understand English, right? So it's always fascinating. People start to slow down, speak louder, and it's like almost like my experience when I moved to California. It's like, dude, no, it's not going to work, guys. Use interpreters. So we really have a robust interpreter services program that helps ensure that our providers, many of you here in the room are pre-med and on their way to do great things. How do we make sure that your job is done well? You can communicate with your patients so you can do what you need to do, and you will be doing. PBX is a phone box exchange, and just the operators you call. So when you're calling in, how do you not be on hold? How do you get to the right people? How do you get a hold of your doctors? And then the Alameda County Sheriff's Office. I oversee the Sheriff's Office substation at the Highland Hospital, which is, we have a contract with them to provide services, because mainly Highland Hospital is the trauma center. So we have folks that drive up, in their cars, and they're passed out at the driver's seat because they've been shot or they've been stabbed. And we have, folks that walking wounded. We had a lot of folks that are coming up, like I mentioned earlier, for the riots and the civil unrest that had emerged. And so really, they're great partners, but also really a huge responsibility for us, because now with all the stuff that's happening, we want to make sure people see and come to our facilities and don't see an enemy, right? We want to make sure they don't see someone or something or a bad that's going to antagonize them. So how do we work with these people based at the hospital, and how do I explain to them my vision for patient experience? That I want them to be community ambassadors, emissaries. I want them to be friendly. I want them to ask what they're here for and how we can help. I want them to help give them updates on how long their wait's going to be. And so these are all things that, we focus on. And then laundry linen as well, I mentioned earlier, like, want to have clean linen, clean laundry. That means scrubs for providers, blankets, sheets, and everything for patients. So all that combined is then, all these departments is what I do on the day-to-day across all those facilities, the 11 or so facilities that I mentioned in campuses of the health system for, a 24/7 operation. So that just kind of gives you a sense of the ops and support services operations. I didn't mean to bore you all with that entirely, but at the same time, I wanted to make sure that I give you a sense, because really the job is for us as indirect care providers to ensure the direct care providers can do their work. And I mentioned earlier, because with everyone in there, ethnic studies that we have, IB, business, poli-sci, CS&E, everything. Healthcare is an ecosystem for all of that, right? If ethnic studies, all the work, we have a lot of great social workers that are here. We got a lot of folks who are doing patient experience work, and our managers focusing on how to actually and truly reach out to patients to understand them. A lot of folks that are right now working in, in public health, whether it's health and social behavior, whether it's ID, whether it's maternal child health or health policy management, like myself, doing management and affecting and writing kind of policies to affect change at a larger level, all critical, right? All critical to affect the social determinants of health and other aspects of these folks that have housing insecurity, food insecurities, other things that are going on. The work that's being done by folks that in the business majors here, the IB folks, this is all part and interrelated to kind of what we need to do and how we are working together. So that's really kind of the role of what I do. Now, moving on. Now, what what are we learning, right? What are we learning here in the last few months? What are we doing? Because the goal of this course is the future of healthcare and all that. And so this slide was really just lessons we're learning, but really it's like kind of dumb to say we're learning it. We've already known this stuff, right? It's actually being reinforced. And so sometimes it's always and I'm sure you guys can certainly relate. Sometimes you go through and say, well, hey, what are the lessons learned in this? It's like, well, we learned that we should do X, Y, or Z. I was like, oh my God, like people have said that for decades about these certain things. Like, why are we still going through that? But one of the things that I think that we're still focusing on is just, like I said earlier, the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 that is affecting the Latino communities, Latinx communities, the Black people of color. It's really troubling, right? But at the same time, these are also communities that, as you go through contact tracing, these are communities that really hold culture and family very dear to themselves, right? So there's no surprise that they are also interacting in close proximity. Also, these are folks that are affected by the negative regression and the lack of growth into generational wealth, right? So these are folks that are doing multiple jobs. They have housing insecurity. So they're crammed, 2 or 3 families, 4 families into homes that aren't built for that. They are, there's food insecurity. So folks are, sharing food and in ways that maybe they would not have done before, right? They're like, and I know you guys have seen this and heard this, but like, heck, sometimes even I think about it. Like, I'd rather go get a fish fillet at McDonald's because just going to, Urban Plates or whatever the heck it is out there is going to be too expensive, right? And so it's, and as while I'm not a student anymore, I was a student a little while ago, and it's like some of that stuff matters. Even as students are like, well, how do I afford certain things? You also want to have fun. You want to go out and do other things, and so you need to have a plan for that. Families with kids, they often put their own health and wellness on the back burner while they get clothes for their kids, to get food for them. And even now with distance learning and folks in school that are younger, some of these schools are providing some hardware, but not all of them, right? So like, how are they affording getting by in there? And that just only means that folks are getting further left behind. The other piece is cultural humility and the scars they carry. And I sent this, it was late last night. I was out of town for the last week, but I did send it to Detchen. I'm not sure if Detchen was able to share, but a small article, or an article that I'd written earlier this year related to kind of my experience, and kind of hearing and experiencing kind of the world and society, especially after George Floyd's death and his murder at the hands of police. And so what that article was, and I'll get into this a little bit later as well, I currently serve as a regent of the American College of Healthcare Executives. And what that is the American College of Healthcare Executives is the group that does board certification in healthcare management. It's kind of like you're board certified in surgery if you're a surgeon, board certified in pediatrics if you're a pediatrician, et cetera. So on that group, and it's an international society. It's got about 55,000 members, and it's chapters all across the country. What I am for Northern Central California. I'm the elected representative, one of 70 or 71 individuals who really are working hard to connect folks and individuals like ourselves, yourselves, early careerists with mentorship opportunities and resources as they continue to grow in their path and their career trajectory. Now, what I had written was, and as a regent, I do write a have to write an article every quarter, and usually it's all kind of like fluff, right? Like, hey, lifelong learning, guys, make sure you guys go and continue to learn, or it's like something else. And it's not things that I don't believe in. I don't write things just for the sake of writing it, but I write what speaks to me. Summer 2020, I had started writing a message, and I could not, and unfortunately I wrote it, and it just wasn't true. It just wasn't real. It wasn't real to me. It wasn't telling me what I wanted to do, and it wasn't what was in my heart. And so, I did write this article, and again, something for you to read. And there's obviously no quiz here or anything like that, but it does give you a snapshot, a little bit more about myself, right? A little bit more about the people that we've lost, people that have been killed, and the trauma and scars that we all carry. Just, I am happy to have seen some of your faces and heard where some of you guys are from, and heard kind of what you guys are doing. But I know that you all are not the fully formed people here today. You didn't just wake up like that, right? You guys have come through and seen some shit, right? It is crazy. You guys have seen some things, and you've actually had to go through some ordeals and stuff, and those scars stay with us. Those scars, unfortunately and fortunately, create and put us to kind of who we need to be. And the story that I have written there just kind of talks about how even myself, I went through so much. I'm a Punjabi Sikh turban wearing man in the society that we live in, and luckily it's in the Bay Area. But I also know what comes with that, right? And I also know what that means. And and in the article you'll read it. But 2 years ago I was at a bar in Livermore, right? Out socializing in Livermore, California, and earlier in the evening, I had an exchange with some individuals, and it was a stupid exchange. It was, going to the bathroom. It was cutting in line to the bathroom, and the person there thought I cut in line. I was like, no, I didn't. Blah blah blah. Words were exchanged, and later on that night, we're sitting outside the bar getting ready to go, and I hear a person from that group whisper something in my ear, which I want to be the cool guy, the cool speaker, but I won't say, I won't say the expletives because I'm not that cool. But he said some stuff in my ear, and right when he said it, I winced and I closed my eyes and I kind of put my fists up to my face because I was like, okay, this is about to happen. And then boom, got hit in the back of the head, turban knocked off, fell on the floor, just fighting, right? And so fighting in the street, and I wasn't fully alone. I was there with friends, and things kind of devolved in the way they devolved into. And boys will be boys, fights will be fights, things happen. But I broke my foot. It was a whole ordeal, and it was challenging. It sucked. I felt, the cops rolled through. It was a whole thing, and I felt like I did something wrong, right? It was like they're asking me like, hey, what's going on? And I was in my suit was ripped, and then finally they're like, okay, well, you can go. And it was like, not do you want to press charges, not do you where these people are, and literally myself, my brother, and a couple of friends, my first thought when they said we can go were, let's get the F out of here, let's go. My foot was broken, it was hurting, and I was limping to the car because I felt that I would get in trouble for something. I did something wrong, right? And so it's been a couple of years since, and the days and the weeks that elapsed since then, I certainly thought a lot about it and kind of what went wrong, what didn't go wrong, what could have done. And, I think that ultimately it happened the way it was going to happen. And all that to be said, and what you'll see in this article is that even after all that, I still have a good life. But if you're a Black person in this country, it's worse for you. It's worse for everyone. And that's coming from me as a victim of a hate crime with my turban knocked off. I'm still saying that it's better for me. So that's the society that we're in, right? And that's the message that I sent out to this, to the professional society, the American College of Healthcare Executives. And I sent them this piece, and I just said, hey, I don't know if I can get fired or unelected as a position that I was in, but you know what? Who cares? I wanted to see that. And that's really one thing that, that's why it's on the slide of like the cultural humility and scars, and why I want to share that with you all. Just because, I also want to be real with you all. I want to be genuine around kind of like my experiences and kind of the world that you are experiencing yourself. But these are what's coming up, right? And the vocal activism, the vocal advocacy, the vocalness of just sharing that, hey, this is not cool, not appropriate. This is not where we want to be as a society for these things. You're making a difference. We're making a difference. We just can't sit down and keep it to ourselves anymore, right? So that's really kind of some of the lessons there, just around all the aspects of that. The other piece that we're learning and we're continuing to reinforce is that how do we protect the burnout with indirect care providers? And I know you have a lot of cool speakers this semester, and I'm sure they're going to bring it up. But burnout with the indirect care providers is a thing. It's a problem. It's something that we're worried about. We're afraid about. I'm sorry. Before that, one thing I also just wanted to mention is about the other slide. I totally forgot. This is probably why, Francis, I should have probably had more slides. But one of the things that we see is that with the social determinants of health piece is that it's really a combination of all these factors, right? There exists the individual, the local, societal levels, and access to basic nutrition, place to live, economic opportunities, all that contributes to their health, right? You guys all know this. But when the physical, mental, and social health are interconnected as they are, and one suffers in one piece of it, that's what we're seeing with all this. And so I share that with you as well. It's especially related to the COVID, right? So we're seeing the China virus, Kung flu, all the teasing of Asian American leaders and all that stuff tied into that. That's the whole piece that I wanted to really share, that these are things that are happening, and to not correct is to condone. And some of us keep saying that, oh, what are we going to do? But you know what? You can say something. If you're on Sprout hanging out and selling something, you can say, you know what? That's not cool. That's not appropriate, or that's not really accurate. If you're doing other things, you really have a voice. So that's really kind of the one thing I wanted to share with the previous slide. It was just kind of a reminder of, leading from where you are. So, School of Public Health there at Cal really espouses that. But, we have to really move forward, right? And so in order to move forward, we got to solve for what we can influence. And so leaders across the country are going to benefit from these lessons learned from the pandemic, but we also got to take advantage of these values that differentiate us and others, right? How do we integrate two priorities to provide change? How do we serve patients while taking advantage of what we know in the pandemic? And what can we kind of do to kind of propel ourselves to the future with some of the stuff? So with that, then, back to like this idea of like burnout with indirect care providers and protecting indirect care providers, right? So the physical health of our workforce is really paramount to our ability to persist in tackling this pandemic. So healthcare leaders really have developed new ways to help reduce exposure and help, keep care providers from contracting or transferring the virus, right? Putting up all the equipment outside the room, so you don't have to go in the room, right? Connecting long tubes to get IVs from outside the door that go into your arm down into the room. So really all these things that we're trying to get creative with. But we really, and we've discovered this kind of a new depth to our talent pools by really creatively realigning talent with like needs. So that's also the stuff that you guys are all working on, right? So, for the folks that are in computer science and are doing EECs and other things, like these are folks that can say, hey, how can I apply my knowledge to this, right? We have folks in Lawrenceburg, Livermore Labs that are helping us make face shields. Like, hey, we have some people, we have some different designs we want to try out. Would you guys be happy if we help? And I said, heck yeah, right? So, staff reassignments are occurring across the board from, again, keep shouting out Tara, but because she's been doing this and it stood out. But staff reassignments are occurring from medical office nurses to PAs performing drive-through testing, to practice managers doing ED triage, and administrators to these COVID testing labs, social workers running daycares for children of essential employees. Like, everyone's got a spot in here. And so all that because we recognize it's important to preserve that psychological health, right, and to prevent the burnout. A lot of organizations have activated a lot of options during the height of the pandemic, right, to create space and time for staff to decompress and recharge. And so we've also offered some mental health training, and there's a lot of digital tools out there to help reduce stress and provide mental health check-ins. And already it's challenging, right? I mean, going to Berkeley is hard. It's hectic. I mean, I know that even in high school, I was just seeing, as of a few years ago, just a lot of folks that I knew at the high schools that were close to my old high school and my old high school, taking caffeine pills, all kinds of stuff, mental health, depression, suicide is a high rate, particularly also in college in a competitive atmosphere like Berkeley. So you got to really just take care of yourselves. And I just found out from a lot of friends I went to high school with, I was just saying, can you believe how crazy it is for students now? They're doing this, that, and the other, and having to take, all these pills. Like, oh yeah, dude, we did that in high school. Where the heck was I? Like, are you kidding? Like, that's crazy. And so I didn't know this, but it's like folks were doing what they could to to really survive and persist and be competitive in what society's saying you got to do, right? It was like a freaking black mark on your, on your forehead if you went to a JC after high school. And it's like, why? Like, that is an amazingly smart way to do it. That's, I think it's incredible. And if you can get in as directly in the university, fantastic. But if you don't, also fine. But, we have these stigmas that are associated with all this. And so the mental health piece isn't just for folks fighting COVID. It's for you all and for everyone to kind of work through and take care of yourselves. And so, the number of COVID cases have varied in different areas, right? So we have to hold on to the realization that mental health and burnout do not start and stop at the hospital walls, right? That's what I mean to tell you. COVID has shown that, these healthcare disparities and mental health have lasted for so long. And a lot of our families and many of our employees return to their families and communities that are suffering from this, acute situation, but they're also coming from legacies of disinvestment and injustice, right? So the full picture of health is equally important to consider for our employees as it is for the patients in our beds and exam rooms, and for the community that even doesn't come to see us, but are still part of the community, of which, our local fabric. So we also know that there's like a huge financial fallout from COVID that results in a lot of difficult decisions with regard to our workforce. So we're moving forward, some folks are getting furloughed, not at Alameda Health System, but other folks have gotten furloughed. And we got to think carefully how we cultivate holistic health for employees and broader communities that we serve. One of the things that I mentioned earlier, that there's a strike and it'll likely be in the news and other things, and it's really challenging. I don't want to take a side here from the strike. I'm obviously planning it on the management side for the folks that are going to walk off the job, but frontline providers have a perspective that they are key to the roles that they play, and that they certainly without them, that would not work, and they want to be compensated for it. Fair point. We also know that healthcare systems are not flush with cash. We know that as a county safety net health system, we also don't have lots of money. We also know that elective surgeries are not happening because we canceled those so to keep people out of the hospital during COVID. And we also know that we don't want to agree to give folks salaries and raises that are beyond what the system can handle, the infrastructure, and you don't want to go bankrupt, people out of jobs. So a lot of things that are happening around how do we protect that and think of it thoughtfully to really respect people, but also try to be as fair as possible. And the last thing around protection is, again, it's also the protection of PPE, but it's also just, protecting them when they come to work, just from the physical pieces. We have folks, unfortunately, people are sometimes assaulted or there are robberies that occur, strong arm robberies near or adjacent to some sites. And so my job is to help investigate that, figure out what we can do, what we could have done better, and making sure people don't know that their voices have been heard. So that is protecting the care providers. And then we talk about, telemedicine, distance caring, emergency management. So a lot of that stuff has to also do with how do we make sure, we emphasize the speed, right, at which the situation on the ground developed and intensified, right? So we've talked about how crazy things were changing. Just today, I saw that there was an article at CDC saying that COVID is now aerosolized and it can be transferred by airborne precautions. So that's going to create a whole new slew of issues of how to protect against that. But because of how fast things are changing, organizations, in the future of healthcare, again, the theme of our program tonight is, we've accelerated decision making and trying to adapt to a different cadence to ensure that the best care possible can be happening. This analysis paralysis stuff is too crazy. And particularly in kind of public entities, sometimes it's like, well, it's taxpayer money, let's slow it down and make sure we dot our T's and cross our I's. But Silicon Valley is our backyard. We should be having all these folks and these startups and their tools and the tech and the apps working to our advantage. And some of the organizations and hospitals are using that, but we also want to make sure we can accelerate the adoption of that. So implementation that might have previously taken weeks or months has now been happening more in days and hours. Things that we said, okay, let's just do it. All of a sudden we're doing it and we're like, wow, I can't believe we put that into play like in 3 days or like in a week. When before would have been like, it's going to be a 6-month project, right? We took baby monitors. I bought baby monitors off of Amazon and we put them in rooms so patients and families could communicate with each other down the hall. We had to do some end of life conversation where someone was passing away. So how do we make sure they don't die alone in the hospital? And yes, those baby monitors came in handy, and they're allowed to see and communicate with each other. Some folks were here from out of town, from Nicaragua, and they were hit by a car. And so how they communicate with their family, right? So these are things that we said, hey, you know what? Let's move it forward. And so, yeah, there are issues around, is the feed encrypted? We want to make sure no one can hack into the feed. We don't want this picture of this person on the internet or someone to take the stuff. And those are important, right? So those are the things that we have to work on. I work on with the team, with IT and others, but really all key, right? So, as you move forward in the future, we got to be quicker. We got to be nimble. The assessments and adjustments are also happening at a more rapid and continual pace. And we also have taken advantage of this ingenuity, right? Through our partnerships, from universities to hotels that are, having folks that are like COVID hotels, so you can sequester there, to manufacturers, and all to help increase access to resources, right? So, as we deepen and formalize these partnerships, we certainly get the benefit of our collective actions kind of seen. The other piece is like agility and innovation, right? That created a real momentum. So, so we've have agility innovation that's going on. Then we have rapid evolution that's happening in parallel. So, for example, the massive uptake of telemedicine and virtual visits have really opened the door to a huge range of possibilities, including advancements in triaging people that show COVID symptoms or monitoring patients with chronic conditions. So in many places, nurses and doctors are really leveraging this tech to connect hospitalized patients with their loved ones, as I mentioned earlier, but also to kind of track, chronic care and individuals who have really a lot of comorbidities. So we're looking to hardwire these telemedicine practices. And I think that before, telemedicine was like, oh, it's going to be hard to do. And we only do it for a few things. Now it's like, it's the way to go, right? So even like distance learning, like right now, what we're doing, right? Virtual Decal, virtual learning. It's, when we are ready to go back to the regular way of doing things, I wonder how many people are going to be used to this, right? And maybe we don't want to go back. So all that being said, as you kind of hardwire these things, we want to be mindful of that ensuring access for all, for all these folks may require alternative approaches. So a lot of people are struggling to care for their loved ones while facing disruptions in income. Some have limited access to technology, like I mentioned earlier, with students, parents having to buy new hardware tech for their kids. So we are trying to practice more intentional inclusion to really ensure that the accelerated pace doesn't already leave behind underserved populations, right? So that's really the key part for us to understand. And, and so this idea of intentional inclusion is key. We already have these issues I talked about: social determinants of health, pervasive racism, systemic issues. And we don't want to just say, the folk, here's what we're going to do. And so folks that can afford it, you pay to play, and you're going to get what you need. And whoever doesn't have it, you're just left behind. One thing, and I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you guys have heard this, especially in the public health program, equality is not equity, right? That is not true. And some people are saying, well, no, we have to be equal. Well, no, right? That's not going to work. If an individual who comes from some level of economic prosperity, and for you pre-meds, you can probably appreciate this. I don't know how many of you all are able to comfortably sign up for an MCAT course, which costs a crap ton of money, right? So can you afford the MCAT course? That's one. If you can afford that MCAT course, whether you are working another job or not, great. Then you have to go to said course. If you're going to that course, then, okay, are you working a job? Are you serving as a GSI? Are you doing something that prevents you from focusing fully on that? Whereas folks who don't have the worry about another job, they're comfortably chilling. They can go to that MCAT course, they can take it, they can relax, they can study, not have to worry about going to another job. No surprise, folks that are able to do that, they score higher. The folks that didn't do that score a little lower. They have it that much harder. Maybe the money, they decide not to go that route, and boom, the gap widens, right? So it's just, it creates this pervasive cycle. So that's really the one thing that, as we move forward with intentional inclusion, how do we get that going in a way that's healthy? Emergency management. So for emergency management, this is all kind of the earlier slides, right? Civil unrest, wildfires, all that stuff, including the pandemic. And so, pandemic will be part of the vernacular. It's here to stay. It's our nomenclature. We're going to use it. I shudder at the next pandemic, but it will come. So now preparedness and emergency management is really a staple in healthcare management now, right? But the scope of this pandemic really exceeded the imagination of even the most stringent plan or best simulation. After 9/11, they instituted a thing called HICS, HICS, Hospital Incident Command System. And really the thing about HICS that was unique was that you really wanted to make sure that there were people, when you activate a command center, there were formal titles that were consistent. So if you were coming in from the fire department or the police department or the FBI or healthcare or emergency response ambulances, that you wanted to make sure that you were able to speak the same language. So you don't want to say, I need to talk to your chief, the chief of police, and the chief of police, like, I need to talk to your chief, and the chief in an organization happens to just be a chief engineer who turns out in the grand scheme of things is really a supervisor, not really the COO or CEO. So it creates kind of a disparity on how do we communicate. So with that, we realized that, Hicks in that design model was really meant for disasters, really massive, large scale things that happen at once. And really then it goes away. Terrorist attack, a bomb, a flood, lightning strikes, hurricanes. In this scenario, the pandemic was not. It was like a slow moving disaster that happened over the course and continues to happen over months, right? These systems aren't built for that, right? We activated command center. I was the chief logistics officer for our health system and serving as the chief and chief of then operations at times when it was trying to figure out how to balance all these things I talked about on the earlier slide. But it's like, the command center is activated 24 hours a day. I cannot be there 24 hours a day all around. And even handing things off, how do we get back and have these certain periods, these activation periods? And we knew we had to do something different, right? So the response was swift, but we also realized we had to adapt, right? So a lot of organizations, this meant creating new intensive care units in the matter of days, so we can kind of make the pandemic response part of regular operations. I talked about, we halted elective surgeries to expand capacity. We had to examine our supply chains to ensure there are enough protective equipment, ventilators, other vital supplies. We certainly activated the command center to ensure communication and transparency, both inside, outside the organization. So we had to write, updates constantly and daily to everyone who worked at the hospital to know that we were on top of it. We were protecting their interests. They had questions around PPE, we were answering it. They didn't feel like they weren't getting any information. We had communication for the community to let them know what was going on. We had further internal communication around how many days of inventory we had left, how far away we were from running out, and what are we going to do, what the next items were we going to use. So all that, comes together in emergency management. So, we know now that we can rise to these challenges as hard as it is, and we can certainly leverage our systemness to increase capacity for critical patients. So like I said, we had 5 hospitals. We can certainly move patients around, create different units, larger scale to help with, intensive care. The military created advanced field hospitals that they were able to deploy. It's certainly a partnership we want to continue to invest in with private entities and hospitals, with the military to deploy those field hospitals. We leverage partnerships and navigate supplier networks to create, to creatively source other materials, right? So like, all right, we also had to be careful because I was part of these calls to FBI. We want to make sure no one was scamming us. There are a lot of scammers out there. So anyone who asks for payment upfront, 100% or 50% upfront, or wiring overseas, that was a no-no. Anyone who led with, hey, we normally don't do this, but we started making masks, also a no-no. So, and also any kind of price gouging. So, but we also had to like reach out to folks and say, hey, what can you get us? We partnered with St. George, the distillery there on Alameda Island. I don't know if any of you have visited. They also, right next door, they do the Hangar One vodka, they do vodka tastings and other things. I know some of your seniors, so that's where you should go when this thing settles down and celebrate your graduation. But they started doing hand sanitizer, right? We reached out and I was literally, oh my God, we were running out of hand sanitizer. And these are sanitizers that were on the walls. We kind of take for granted. You go in, you put your hand to the thing and it spits out. Ran out. I was worried. My girlfriend was like, "What's going on with you?" And so she called a lot of distilleries up and down, and St. George was like, "Hey, yeah, we're making some hand sanitizers now." And so went, got some drums from them, 55-gallon drums, used that and started refilling, and boom, we're back in business. And so truly created partnerships, reaching out and just trying to, everyone was able to do something and able to help. And so all that to be said, these emergency plans, these partnerships are key because we need to have good plans to help mitigate the harm against these vulnerable communities, right? So that's a theme I keep saying: social determinants of health, vulnerable communities, intentional inclusion. Let's not leave them behind. And so now a lot of experts are predicting the second wave or a third wave in some areas as the country now reopens, as our county reopens, and COVID-19 influenza, this season is now coming upon us, and it's going to continue to take a toll on those that are marginalized. So, while we're not going to be able to remedy generations of disparities in months, we can consider what the education and outreach and resources can be deployed to reduce infection and death rates. And so, as leaders who care, which is what we are, what you all are, and everyone's a leader, right? You're either, you are certainly either inspiring or leading folks in high school, folks that may look up to you. When you go to grad school, you're going to be leading folks that are undergrads and so on and so forth. We have a moral and business imperative to increase our access to information, testing, and treatment. So, we're performing analyses of how and why different populations are most impacted. Certainly minority communities, low-income neighborhoods, individuals with disabilities and pre-existing conditions, homeless and housing vulnerable folks. And that's going to help us hopefully identify some additional preemptive actions that address these, housing insecurities and these other social determinants. One thing I'll say is, learning and research from across the field can and must be used to create and really rehearse and choreograph these stronger plans. As we reevaluate and all of our successes and other things, we have a lot of contributors: C-suiters, frontline care providers, first responders, higher education, and they've really helped expand our focus, includes public health officials, patients, families, and many others to really help lift our spirits. And so those are key. And so one thing, just, in wrapping and closing up here a little bit, this year we needed some wins. We need some wins, right? And we need some more. It's been a very tough year. It's shaken us to our core. And not all of us have made it through. Leaders that I know, that I've seen, have stepped down for their role. There have been an incredible amount of public health officials that have been terrorized, ridiculed, received death threats because they're perceived as not opening up the country or opening up their towns. They've been in the face of harsh criticism and trying to do what's right and following the data. And others have stepped down because, well, you can't do this work nonstop without a break. Just like you guys can't study 24/7 without a break. You guys can't, you will break yourselves. And not any of us has emerged through this unscathed, right? Our hearts, our minds, our bodies, our souls have all been pierced, and in some cases even impaled, right, by like the murder of Black lives in our country, by a pandemic that's decimated communities of color, and by climate change and wildfires and the lack of clean air. So all that to be said is, these conversations, the work that, that we're doing in these classes, particularly the Decal courses, are sometimes, creep and have a overlap in the kind of societal conversations we wish to see. We wish that were happening more real time and were more nimble. It really brings a sense of realism what's happening, but also that balance with realism and idealism for making it better, right? So the road ahead is definitely going to be long. I mean, when I was in school, folks were like, "You're the generation that's going to take care of everything," right? And then I'm not too much older than you guys, but but you're going to keep on hearing that, right? That you're the generation that's going to help fix it, and we just got to keep on leaving it better than we found it. And I think that's kind of the key thing there. But it's important to make sure you celebrate your milestones. Again, folks that are going to be graduating this year, folks that are going to be finishing their sophomore year, a lot of folks are going to be declared majors in business. You still have to apply, to get in, and and I hope that you all get in. But everything's a milestone. Finishing the semester, finishing this at 8 o'clock or before 8 when we get done with this, that's a milestone. Kick your feet up, get some food, relax, do something. Got to celebrate the little things, because those milestones represent progress, right? And that's really key. So the only key reminder is that I will, just leave you guys with is get out there and vote this year. Make sure if you're from out of town or out of state, figure out what's up with your absentee ballot. See how it can get mailed to you. Take care of yourselves first. That's the only way you can take care of your families, your friends, and your communities. The third thing is sometimes the only difference between a good day and a bad day, especially when you have no control over anything, right? We can't have a control over things, so we control how we react. Is just really your attitude. A lot of things I've shared with you have had a lot of stressful nights, and this, this job certainly has taken its toll on me personally. It's hard sometimes and tiring with a lot of folks like, where's PPE? Where's the negative pressure? Where's single point injury? What's going on? How are we protecting people? It's like, oh my God. So I just kind of just deep breath and say, okay, I will try to help you. My job here is to make it better. I'm not here to wake up to make it be an obstacle. So with that as the governing principle, let's have at it and let's figure it out. But you can't have control over everything, but you can't have control over attitude. And the other piece is, commit to excellence whenever you can. Your greatness in cultivating others and your friends, and continue to be bold. And have that courage to act and have those convictions to believe in what's right and really focus on equity and inclusion for everyone. So that's really kind of the key parts. I'm a big superhero fan. I actually, we had the award ceremony a few weeks ago, and the theme was superhero. Let me see what I can do here. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. Oh no, where are we? 1 second. We had a superhero theme things, and my favorite superhero is Batman. So I put this up, that was the thing, and then it switched out the logo with the logo of the American College of Healthcare Executives, which I will that's my last slide here. I want to tell you a little bit about. And actually, sorry, I didn't switch the slide here, but we talked a little bit about this, kind of what we can do moving forward, right? Building that, you can all read this, so I won't go over it, but really, having a inclusive and psychologically safe space, right? And it's equitable for everyone, whether it's a workplace or not, helping improve patient outcomes and limiting racism. That's the future of healthcare. So this is really what we're aspiring to, increasing the knowledge and health of impacts of racism and the intergenerational trauma on the social determinants of health, and then really creating economic opportunity for Black-owned businesses and other businesses that are owned by marginalized groups. That's really the kind of key focuses for us, and that's kind of the theme that I shared with you today. The last thing I'll share is, networking and professional affiliations. Like I said, American College of Healthcare Executives, what I'm part of. The California chapter of that is called the California Association of Healthcare Leaders, and what we had done that day, and Francis also, that's how he and I met. We were both panelists on an event there for early careerists, and one of the things then we did last week or 2 weeks ago was changing the logo out in the sky to be the logo of the American College of Healthcare Executives. And the key thing about that I'll share just around superheroes is, and I love these stories. I actually couldn't afford going to movies when we were younger. My family couldn't do that. We couldn't afford comics. I actually bought 2 comics till I realized, I don't know, did you guys know that comics don't end? Like, you have to, as you flip through it and you read it's like, oh, stay tuned for the next adventure. You're like, what the hell is this? Like, so once I realized that I was buying comics, and I told my parents, like, oh no, this is never going to end. This is the one book, and now we have to keep buying them. That got old real quick. So I have comic books, so there's 5 of them, and I don't know how the stories end. I could probably Google it now or whatnot, but I love comic book movies. I love comics. I love all this stuff. And and now, and one of the things that I think comes across in some of this, and that I share with our at our professional society awards ceremony, when I gave some comments, was that, heroes, and this is what we all are, right? We rage at injustice. We're not down with that. We're not down with what's going on. There's a corrupt systems that wish to oppress and exploit. And how do we move past that, right? We will not accept that. That's just the way it is. These heroes and what we do are kind of helping broken spirits as we, these dark alleys, it's dark alley visual with heroes, you're probably of the human soul, right? To bring balance to the world. And we're also learning and teaching some strengths we didn't know we had. So with that, and you're finding these hope in these dark places, you know, we're stronger when we're together, and we're also trying to just leave things better than we found. So that's really it. If you know, happy to, I don't know if I'll share my information in the chat box here, just for my email address, but I know it's 7:27. We'll love to pause for some questions, comments, thoughts, see, you know, what you guys are thinking. And then we can hopefully wrap up that way, pretty strong. So that is that. Turn it back over to, is it Dechen who's facilitating, or Francis?
Yeah, we can take any questions from students now. You can chat it or raise your hand or just unmute.
Yeah, you guys can also unmute and just ask directly via the microphone too if you want.
I'm just adding my email address here in there, guys, in case you have any questions now in the future, or on LinkedIn. Just again, always available to chat or just even connect you with people that you might want to talk to. And that it's, you know, not going to take it to heart if you don't want to talk to me, but if there's someone that I know that you want to talk to, I am happy to connect you guys.
Okay, I have a quick question I'm gonna basically open with, if that's okay, Baljeet.
Yeah.
So since we have so many potential pre-meds here, and some people are actually, you know, thinking about pre-med, pretty gung-ho, but are also learning more about, like you said, what it really means in terms of commitment to be a provider. But if they do become a provider, what's the new generation of doctors, what do they need to look like that's different from the current generation of doctors right now in order to function in the new world?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think, you know, one of the things that new providers, right, that are coming into the workforce, whether you're going to be a nurse practitioner, a PA, an MD, a DO, whatever you choose, and that's just, you know, medicine. So there could also be pharmacists, you know, there could be PT, OT, speech and language pathologists. I think the key part is really understanding that now it's a larger issue than just the acute piece that you're treating. As people are coming in, there's a developed understanding of this cultural humility, these scars that are there. You know, if you're going to be treating someone for a cough, how do you recognize other signs? How do you become a provider that has it in your DNA? That you're just checking and say, hey, how are you doing overall, right? Obviously, things are timing. You have 15, 20-minute appointments. You got to turn people around. You can't hear their life story because it's, you know, you're going to fall behind. But within all that, how do you then still make sure that you're plugged into, you know, maybe someone who needs additional resources? You can't give it that at that point in time, but how do you develop that skill set to really be in tune to that? I think that's one thing. I think the other piece then is also just developing an appreciation for the economics of healthcare, right? Like we folks that are in orthopedics and others, they're different implants that cost different prices from different companies, but the healthcare outcomes are the same with all of them, right? So how do you as a provider be more cost effective and say, okay, I don't need these things, they're more expensive, but we can use this, right? Don't be that provider who's gonna be like, no, I can't switch this even though it's less expensive for the health system. You know, how do you open up a sterile kit and you need to have gloves and there's sutures and there's other things, but let's say there's forceps in there that you always throw away. How do you say, hey guys, we don't really need these forceps in here. They're metal, they cost a lot of money. We're paying a lot for this kit. Never really use it in the case. Don't need it. So I think that's really key. So just really kind of having that EQ of just as you treat your patients, realizing that, you know, it's starting to become a little bit more holistic, right? And the integrated medicine piece, I think, is going to start to continue to grow as we start to see all these impacts of all the stuff, man-made and non-man-made disasters we're seeing. Plus, then this idea of you know, this fiscal stewardship piece of healthcare and ensuring that big folks can have access, and it's not adversely affecting anyone.
Okay, no, I couldn't agree with you more. It sounds like what you're saying is hopefully providers see themselves as more of an overall part in a team of a larger machine in a picture than like the authority figures like doctors have traditionally seen themselves as, and hey, what I say goes, and because those are some of the doctors I had to work with in the past. that they saw themselves as eagles and not geese flying in formation. They actually said that stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I hope that's what the next generation doctors look like. That sounds like it's going to be a much better system than what we see right now. I think Simran has a question.
Yeah, I had a question. Again, thank you so much for like coming out and being a guest speaker into our class. I really thought your presentation was very informative. So my question is sort of like, for someone that's trying to go into like healthcare and health management before their MPH, what sort of like early career advice do you have to give? Because a lot of those like health operations internships are very competitive. Even post MPH, like you'll see like those fellowship programs that a lot of medical centers have, they're very competitive. So what sort of like early career advice do you have, or like networking tips do you give to people that want to go into like health management?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, informational interviews and shadowing, that's your best friend, right? Especially when you don't need something right away, right? So sometimes people are like, will come in and approach information interview shadowing, like I need a job, and they might say or do something that kind of is a turnoff, unintentionally, where, so I would avoid that. But truly approach it as, I want to shadow, right? Like I offer to everyone, now it's a little challenging because it's COVID, but if anyone on this call or you yourself want to come and shadow with me one day and say, hey, what, everything you said on those bullet points on that slide, I want to see it in action, right? Beauty about shadow days is nothing changes in my life. I'm going to have the day I'm going to have. You can come see it because that's what it is. And I think people really approach it that way. So as you kind of come through and you start to just shadow folks, and it's really, I saw the lineup of folks that are in this class, this decal for this semester. That's amazing. You should all reach out to these people and say, hey, do you mind if we can have an informational interview for 20 or 30 minutes just to chat about your career path? Maybe it's something that you heard that's a little bit more insightful, you want to learn more about. And, not to say that it's in a negative way, but people do like talking about themselves. People like to, share their story and their lessons learned and kind of what's what. So, the key is to really just do that. And once you do that, always end with, and I had a script. I'm happy to, if you guys email me, I'm happy to share it with you. Just some general questions that I always like to use when I was a student, and I share with folks. When you end that conversation, hey, knowing what you know now about me or my interests and stuff, do you recommend I talk to someone? Who do you recommend I talk to? Is there anyone else you recommend I chat with to learn more? This, that. Okay, sure. They might say, I know one or two people that do X. I'll connect you. Or they might say, actually, I don't really have anyone who's interested in that. Fine, but you got to ask. And that's kind of how I grew my network. So one person connected me to another person. I went and visited with them, shadowed them, so on and so forth. And again, particularly if you're into health management, the American College of Healthcare Executives and ACHE, that's certainly an organization to look into. Berkeley, actually, the undergrad program and the graduate program, so the undergrad for public health and graduate public health, HPM, are all part of the higher education network for ACHE. So we've been trying to get into the program to say, hey, we'll come and be guest speakers. You can come shadow. We have a lot of folks that are willing to provide mentorship opportunities. So that's, again, reach out to me. I'm happy to connect you with folks there to see what can be done. And this is applicable for all of you. Even if you want to be providers and direct care providers, and it doesn't hurt to kind of see, like Francis was saying, about the other side of things. But that's kind of similar to what I would say is really how the approach would be. Just kind of start and really ask the questions, and I think people really love to hear and see these questions, and it really feeds their soul as well to provide some insight. And then when you apply for jobs and you say, hey, I'm looking at this, that, or the other thing, they might keep you in mind. Hey, we have an entry-level job. Are you interested? Or might have an internship going on. But you don't even need to have an internship or a fellowship. You can actually just apply straight to a real job, to just in the position. And that's how I didn't tell you guys that's part of my story, but there was a guest speaker who came to a disparities class when I was in grad school in the School of Public Health, HPM, at University Hall. And she said, hey, if you guys want to come and shadow me, hit me up. I went up to her after class, say, I would love to shadow you. I went and visited her. She was a chief quality officer at San Francisco General Hospital. During that visit, I met one of her colleagues who was the chief operating officer. She said, hey, you should talk to him. During that shadow, I thought he was cool. I said, hey, do you mind if I reach out to you for shadowing? Shadowed him on a different day. And later on, I said, hey, I'm going to have to find an internship. If you know of anything, let me know. where I can compete, right? I was specific to use the words, let me know what opportunities I can compete for. I didn't want to imply that I wanted to get a free lunch. I didn't want to like get do something shady. And you know what? Then he ended up, he said, hey, here's an opportunity. I went to go interview. Turns out they just gave me the job. I didn't even have to interview because my shadowing was my interview. I shadowed with the chief quality officer and I shadowed with the COO, two of the higher ranking folks. I even went with like those little leather folios. I even went with one of those and it was empty. There was like freaking nothing in there because I was embarrassed to walk in empty-handed. I feel like my arms were gangly. You guys can't see them, but I'm not very tall, but I feel like my arms like still hang. So I just want to hold something. Didn't even have a piece of paper. If he had asked me for a pen or if he had said, hey, can I borrow a piece of paper? Write this down. I literally had nothing in there. But he said, hey, we hope you are interested in these projects. And it's because I had done what you were doing. I had asked questions, asked them why they were doing what they were doing, not just kind of how they knew that was the right decision. I didn't really care what was decided. I wanted to know just how are you good at your job? And so that's really the way to approach it. And opportunities will arise, and people will take notice, and will really remember how you felt and how you approached the conversation. So that's a long-winded way of answering that question, but really you guys can all start that and do that. And again, feel free to email me or add me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to share any more information or answer more questions about that.
Thank you so much, Baljeet. And that's like I can't even emphasize how important that piece of advice is. Like, you guys have access to you already met Jason, you've already met Jenny, you're meeting Baljeet today. I think they've all given you their contact information, and there really is no excuse this semester to meet other people. I mean, you literally just have to hop on the computer. You don't have to even travel and park, right? So these people can literally set up some meetings or advice or even a shadowing with you when things calm down. But if you guys don't take advantage of this, which is what this class is for, that is on you. It really is. We're trying to set up opportunities here for opening doors for you, but this really is for you guys to expand your network and your knowledge base, like Baljeet is saying here. So I hope.
And Francis, you're absolutely right. I mean, Jason's awesome. We're on the same group and same society here. That's how Jason and I met. I recruited him to join the higher education network. But we go to all these events, and I always offer to folks to come shadow me, and literally no one takes you up on the offer. I don't know I don't know what's up with my delivery, or like I don't know if I give off like a creeper vibe or something. But like no one will come and shadow with me, and I'm like, what is it about what I'm doing here? But sometimes folks will shadow, and it's always really fun. And but if someone offers to, hey, hit me up, reach out to me, please do it, right? Folks are if I didn't mean it, I would not have said it just now, right? And Francis or Dechen didn't send me a threatening email. They don't have my family tied up somewhere in an undisclosed location till 8 o'clock. Like literally, we could, it's just because I want to help. And the other thing is, I was the beneficiary of someone taking a chance on me, right? That COO gave me an opportunity, and you really are going to pay it forward. And that's, folks aren't going to say, like, whether it's, Tara or Marcus, who might possibly stay another year and become a history major. Like, I mean, all these folks, you have these opportunities, you're going through all these things, and you work so hard to get to where you are. What's another question? What's another email? If someone doesn't respond, maybe, but I don't respond all the time because it's an accident. I have an iPhone that's really stupid that when I actually check the email, I say, I'm going to mentally check this again later on, and maybe I'll forget because they're synced up. But if someone offers you and says, hey, I'm gonna, I want you to come shadow me or come reach out, please do that. It's only because, they mean it, they want to pay it forward, and you certainly will pay it forward. People will rarely say, you know what, I made it. Sorry, can't have you shadow me. I got to where I am. I made it on my own. Can't really pay it forward. So just, you've come so far not to ask a question. And if people don't respond, whatever. But so Francis is spot on. Jason's been great. Again, your lineup for this semester is absolutely great, but take advantage of that. These are people that you can really leverage and learn from and get connected and to build your own network.
Before I forget, are you going to be able to join us on December 7th?
That's my plan. That is my plan.
All right, you get to see you get to see all these amazing students take your information and your data and your knowledge and create their own idea to improve the future in the world.
I mean, I really just hope Marcus is going to talk about the intersection between healthcare and history and
Okay.
the lifestyle. So I don't. If he can do that, I'm telling you where my vote's going. But if not, it's an open field, guys.
All right, Marcus, we're all looking at you, December 7th. I think
I got you. I got you.
Sweet. Awesome. All right. I can't wait to see the history and the medical solutions intersection. That'll be the first for me. I can't wait for that. I think we have a question from Rachel.
Yes. So once again, thank you for sharing tonight. It was really interesting and really fun to listen to. So like when you brought up like when you order the baby monitors off of Amazon to help with like end of life care. So like what were other creative solutions that you had to come up with? And then what was it like, I guess, working, with and against the HIPAA violations and rules and everything?
Oh gosh, great question. And so that was one thing around, okay, how do we get folks to communicate? What's going on there with baby monitors? The other piece that was like, okay, how do we get folks to just make sure when they're coming to the facility, we know that they've been screened. So it's like, well, I don't know. So literally, I did a lot of event management or planning, and when I was in college, there and doing like after parties and involved that kind of whole aspect of things. Literally, we're like, you know what? we're going to pretend that this hospital is a club. How would you bounce a club? How would you try to get into a club, right? Show your ID, you give them a band, you walk through, you check the door, make sure no ins and outs, like all that stuff. Like literally, I was like, I'm going to turn this place into a club, right? I mean, I didn't tell people that. That's what I was thinking. And so that was like, all right, so boom, you come in. We had literally gave everyone green bands at the door. That means you were checked. If you're walking around campus and it was a collective enforcement, so it's like, okay, if you see someone on campus who doesn't work there, who doesn't have a badge, and they don't have a green band, they were not screened. Send them back, right? Send them back to get screened and make sure their temperature is checked. For staff, it's okay. Well, we got them screened, check their temperature, just threw on some stickers on their badge. Nothing too fancy at all. All we need is a dot. Monday's red, Tuesday's green, Wednesday's blue, whatever. And you have that day's dot, you were checked, good. If you don't have it, send them back, right? Move folks forward. So all that to be said, I mean, those are some of the things that we were moving forward with. And for the HIPAA violations, I think partly a lot of people were certainly concerned and certainly worried about those level of like the video and the sharing. There's also other things around how do we get folks to embrace that. So we had our IT folks come in. We used the secure Wi-Fi. We just made sure we had the phones that are set up at a station. Had folks kind of keep track of that way. The other thing was like the negative pressure, right? We eventually bought some expensive meters that tell you it's negative pressure, but literally we just took a piece of tissue, put it right at the door, at the edge of the door. And if the air blew it in, it was negative pressure. If the air was pushing it out, it was positive pressure. And we did not want positive pressure. The other thing was we went to single point of entry. So it meant some patients had to park really far away and they couldn't ambulate. So they had to they're on crutches and other things. So I was like, dude, can we just get a golf cart? So we just talked to folks and we just really bought a golf cart, and it was open air golf cart, made sure we folks sprayed it down with some disinfectant spray, and it was open air. So we just had folks hop on the back of a golf cart and just cycle, right? So it wasn't, again, nothing too fancy, but it was just like better than what we had. And we were trying to get better at it throughout the time. So those are kind of some of the things we did, but certainly I think sometimes people get an analysis paralysis of like, oh, well, we can't do this because of HIPAA or something. And so we really had to push our way back. And some people didn't want to go to have patients walk that far. And, I was the one that said, guys, you either want single point of entry to make sure folks in here are screened. And if we do, people are going to have to walk. It sucks to say, and these patients are on crutches, but they're going to have to come up that hill on crutches. I don't want to be the bad guy here, but if we need to shut down the campus and protect the folks that are coming in and going, this is how we do it. And it took a little bit of fortitude to say that, but I also didn't want to be callous and say, well, they can figure it out. Well, how do we address the symptom? How do we address the side effect now? And so I think that was it, but that's a really good question. I actually forgot about some of these things, and you kind of just going through and do it. But again, nothing fancy. I'm glad I went to Berkeley. Thank you very much, gods and the and the admissions committee who had lapses of judgment and chose me, but it wasn't also rocket science. It's like, well, how do we work our way out of this? It's like being in a escape room or other things. We know what we know. How do we just apply it?
Awesome. Love your answers. Any other questions for anybody?
Can you give us a rundown of like a day in your life?
Oh
like
my
when you
gosh,
do like
I want to hear
from
that.
the-
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, geez. Okay, well that's well, you know what? Hey guys, we're gonna go to 9 p.m. This is gonna be great. Just cancel all your plans. We're gonna spend some time. The day is really again, I hate to share this sometimes because I don't want to turn people off to like the life of a hospital administrator because it's a healthcare administrator because it can be better. I will confess I don't I struggle with work-life balance. I struggle with trying to take care of myself and be better. Kind of almost hypocritical because I was really emphasizing that to you guys all today and this evening, but it's really because I want to embody the change you wish to see in others. I really want you to do, you all to do that to inspire me. But it wakes up. I tend to get up like around maybe 5:30 or 6. First thing I do is check my phones, check my personal phone because my bosses have that, and then check my work phone for text messages. I will then thereafter just look at email, see if there's anything urgent, emergent overnight, any issues that had popped up that maybe like morning clinic, maybe someone called in sick and we were not able to clean OR, other things like that. Sometimes there's like, a bird flew into a power line at John George and the whole hospital and the behavioral health wing went down. Okay, shoot. Okay, what's going on there? Sometimes one day we had a, code orange because there was code 10 because there was a suspicious package. I had to call on the bomb squad and we had to go there and kind of see what's going on. It was like all these kinds of crazy things. It's like sometimes I kind of should write these down because I'll tell, my loved ones and my girlfriend, and they're like, what the hell? One time someone eloped and escaped to John George and then, unfortunately escaped the hospital, ran down, got hit by a car, got up, ran across the freeway, got hit by a car again, got up, ran. It was like this guy was a Terminator, but like it was like that's kind of the one thing we do. Then we have to do a root cause analysis and figure out, okay, today, how did this person get out of here? What's going on? So then I'll do that. And then thereafter, the rest of the day just consists of me really kind of multitasking. So I'll go to my meetings depending on what I had planned or what the day would have catalyzed me into based on the things I just shared with you. Whatever the issues might be, we might have a lot of 5150s in one of the hospitals and we need to have more security there to have one-to-one watching them while they get transported. So I'll take my meetings. I do try to be present and try to be seen at the campuses. I want to be a leader that is not just absentee or on email or no one ever sees me. So I try to rotate my time at the different campuses every couple of weeks or at least every month. And then when I'm at that campus, trying to then be with a different department to be seen or stop by and just say what's up and, talk to people and say hello. And really in a way that doesn't feel rushed, right? So making it feel like I got nothing going on just to talk to you. But, meanwhile, my phones will be going off or emails will be going on. And so throughout the day is checking email. And then, at the end of the day, I ended with more email and more meetings and just trying to make sure just, reaching out to folks. And I always want to make sure any of my staff, any departments that are reaching out to me, I respond to all my emails before I go to bed or before I wrap up for the day. So it's probably something I should not have as an aspirational goal because it's just impossible because I get like 500 I think on average weekend was crazier because of the strike. On average I probably get like maybe 250 emails a day and maybe not all of them are actionable. And then I also am not very good at restraints, so I have to I'll see a problem, I want to say something, or then I got to step back and say, okay, I have like directors who report to me, who have managers that report to them, who have supervisors that report to them. All in all, I have overseen by about maybe 1,100 people. So it's like I need to not try to jump in and problem solve, let the teams do that and maybe reach out to the team separately and saying, hey, what can I do to help you with this? And so, so that's pretty much, the day, answering phone calls, emails, going to meetings and really just trying to hit people, hit them up and where they are and where they're at and let them know that whatever their problem is important to me, whether it's their trash wasn't cleaned or the MRI is down or, someone was assaulted or someone just feels like their bulb doesn't have high enough wattage, which between you and me, that's not high on my priority list. But I got to make them. I want them to feel like I didn't write them off. So that's kind of a general day in the life. But hey, if you want to come shadow me, you don't have to be here at 6:30 a.m. at my house, but we can certainly meet like 9 a.m. at the campus, and you can get a flavor for it as well.
That's crazy. Anyone who wants to shadow you better be wearing comfortable tennis shoes, I'm thinking at this point. I have a question. Does someone else have a question? Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes,
Like, how do
please.
you stay like calm and like sort of saying when all these things are happening and like you're bombarded by all these like questions and comments and situations?
I think one of the things for me is just I try to say that there's more to life, right? There is more to life, and that like, and I get that our work is life, is our people's lives. But I also just try to just step back and to say that again, it's the people are dying, people are getting killed in the streets by law enforcement. People are getting sick and with a virus that we are trying to fight and address. And then I just kind of step back and just think about what I have, not what I don't have. And so that ultimately the future that I want for myself is one that I want to be, I want to live long, and I want to make impact as much as possible, and I want to really just be healthy. I don't want to be a ball of stress the whole time. And so I think when people come to me with these problems, you're absolutely right, Rachel. It's like they'll come in and they're like, oh, and you're like, it's like overwhelming. And part of me is like, dude, oh my God, I don't need this today, or I don't want to do this today. But it's also the career I chose. So I just try to take a deep breath and just, remind myself that this is what I chose, but also remind myself that I'm going to do a good job, but there's also more to life. So if I don't have the 100% answer, or I don't have the perfect solution, it's okay, because I'm trying my best. I'm trying my best to do this, and I'm trying my best to help them. And I hope they see that. And, in a few of those times during the peak, pandemic, I was even like, you know what? I kind of hope I get fired. Or I was like, you know what? I wonder if, is there someone that can do a job better than me? Oh my God, please tell me there is. I will love to see that person. I will shadow that person. Take my job right now. I will escort them into the building and love to see someone do something that can be better than, can do it better. But it wasn't more in a facetious way. It's just like sometimes you kind of get into your own, caught up in your own feelings, right? You kind of caught up and you're like, am I doing a good job? Like sometimes every day is not a win. It's kind of a, shoot, we couldn't get the rooms converted. Shoot, some of the staff were reporting symptoms. Shoot, like someone else got assaulted, or shoot, we're running out of supplies, or like sometimes you don't get some wins, and it kind of can have a way to impact. But it's just helpful to have folks say, hey, you know what, we're all doing the hardest we can. But and also, again, hey, comic book movies, sense of humor, just really just trying to keep that going, and just keep it light. I think that's important.
Thank you.
Anyone else have another question?
I see one in the box about what I do to de-stress. Honestly, I started, and a lot of this is thanks to my girlfriend, as I started doing these like exercise videos, like these 10-minute like high intensity videos off of YouTube, which I never thought in my million years I'd be a kind of a workout person. But I started to do it, and I felt a little better, and then it was a good way to kind of get some of that energy out. But I also really like to just start to get more into food, right? Try different things. Try to kind of, how do I eat? Eat things that are creative. Like, I mean, never again growing up in New Orleans, coming into California, like didn't know what the freak what hot pot was, what pho was, didn't know what galmi jib was, just freaking don't know what Korean barbecue was, don't know what Vietnam. I mean, I'm telling you, for going to school in Berkeley for as many years as I did for grad school, I just went to Cafe Durant, IB Hoagies, and maybe Thai Basil, and then I went to get Top Dog and then burgers. It's like people are like, dude, you had access to so much. So I think I'm just trying to get better about eating food and trying to experience new things. And then, it doesn't hurt that every platform now exists to have entertaining TV and value. So I'm trying to just watch shows, Netflix and stuff like that. So really just stuff that's not like really unhealthy. So I try not to just drink too much or try, too much food that's not unhealthy. But yeah, just try to treat myself out. So pretty much that's part of it. Good question. I'll take suggestions if you guys have any other things I should do. All ears.
I think you have another question here from Sumit in a box.
Okay. So in the current times, does limiting the monopoly period make sense? The monopoly period should not be very long, but in these times, won't that mean that we're just taking away the incentives that company have to develop a vaccine as fast as possible, since they will not be able to monetize the costs and efforts they put in? Got it. Oh, so I think you mean by monopoly the amount of time for patents. I believe, right? Their patents or trademarks that they have on certain things. I think that for folks that get the question, pretty much, when you develop a drug, it's either you have the rights to that drug for a certain amount of time before then your patent or on it expires, and then it becomes generic, right? Then other companies can go to market and do all that. And then no problems to me. It was a good question. So yeah, I think right now in the times, does it make sense limiting the monopoly period? I think that it would make sense, but the incentive for folks to be, that's why I think there's like such a vaccine race, because they want to, whoever can get to it first certainly will monetize that and will be able to take advantage of their investment in the R&D. So to shorten the time period means that folks will kind of lose a little bit of the incentive for a vaccine to COVID-19. I think whoever gets there first is going to be, it's going to be the whole world needs this thing. But I think overall, what to decrease the monopoly, I don't think that's going to be attractive to a lot of the vaccine makers. And my brother's in pharma, has worked at Genentech and all these companies, so I've gotten to learn a little bit more of that. But I do know that the incentive for this is really that once they lock it down, to really have it for a long amount of time. And even then, that's why I see some larger companies trying to gobble up some of the other ones with drugs in their pipeline, because they know they want to be able to just leverage that their R&D. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, I think we are coming to the end. I got one quick question. I don't know if you can even answer this in 1 minute or not, but my question is, if you had one wish for AI to help you with your job, what would that wish be? Like, how would you design an AI system that would actually make your job easier?
Oh man, check my emails. Hands down, like just to really vet out the emails that require one-word answers, that can require just explaining to folks, like, here's how you put in a work order. You don't have to email me to get your light bulb changed. Like, there's literally 15 people that can help you with this, and all you have to do is follow directions. So I think that would be my hands down. If I didn't have to be on email as much, I think I could be a much better much better person and be the leader I believe I can be, which is just being out and present and seeing everyone and really thanking them for the service that they do every day and being shoulder to shoulder with them as they are on the front lines. But yeah, that would be it, man. If any of you guys are doing that, then maybe you can partner with Samir and go straight to, getting the patent on that for the next 30 years. I'd be all in.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Baljeet, for coming and sharing your wisdom with all of us. Dichen, do you have anything you want to add before we close out?
Just make sure to turn in your homeworks. I think we're missing a few. Yeah, thank you so much, Baljeet, for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for the invitation. Again, hopefully I hear or see from some of you guys soon. Best of luck with everything, and hopefully I'll see you guys on the 7th.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll have the recording up and to share with you guys. You guys can review this amazing, fun lecture we had tonight. Thank you again, Baljeet.
Thanks, guys. Bye. Have a good night.
Good night.